Hi, my name is Mike Rushton from Tamarack Outdoors and welcome to this video on pitching the Helsport 4-6 Varanger Camp and Stove. Hope you enjoyed the video. So first of all, I'm just going to take you through the component parts of the tent, both the outer, the inner, the floor and the stove. You can actually purchase the outer as a separate item, and with the outer you get a pole, a drying ring for inside. With the camp version you get pole sets for the actual porch, a peg bag with repair kit, and as an extra now is the Lavvu disc with the associated cord, which we'll come on to later. Then we've got the inner tent, the floor, and then the stove. We're going to break this down now in more detail and show you how to pitch it. So one of the first things I do before setting up is take about 8 pegs out of the peg bag and just put them in a pocket so they're to hand when I need them. Then I take out the Lavvu disc. Lavvu disc is a piece of 3mm aluminium, it's 150mm diameter with a 20mm hole in the centre. And on that, scribed within the aluminium, is 8 points. These are to coincide with the 8 points of the Lavvu. With this you get an associated piece of cord. In one end there's a loop and in the other there's a knot. I'll just show you now how to use this to set up the Lavvu. Put the Lavvu disc on the ground and then with the peg in the centre. Leave the peg proud slightly, because from there the loop end of the cord goes over the peg. I pull the cord and line the cord up with one of the lines, the scribed lines on the disc, and come to the knot. I just check that I'm lined up and then just roughly place a peg, and then move round onto the next line, make sure you're lined up, and then place a peg, and so on till you get the full 8 points. So now the pegs are roughly in place, I can remove the cord from the peg on the Lavvu disc. You don't need this anymore, so you can put this in the peg bag. Leave the Lavvu disc in. It actually acts as a foot for the pole, and also if you can get the peg in deep enough, around about 20mm off the ground, the pole will sit on top of that peg and on top of the Lavvu disc and acts as a foot to prevent the pole from sticking into the ground. So now let's get the tent and roughly peg out. The first thing out of the bag is the actual crown. This is the actual top of the Lavvu. So I'll pull it out first and just lay that down and then empty the rest of the tent out. And the thing I'm looking for is a red tab to the left hand side of the door as you actually enter the tent. This is your start point for pretty much everything for pitching your inner and also the floor. Not only that, the wind direction of which way you pitch your tent is quite important. You want the wind going across the door. So as you can see now, I've just roughly placed the tent flat on the ground and I've located the red tab. Remember, the red tab is on the left hand side of the door as you enter. So all I do is just place the tab over the peg and then leave quite a lot of slack for later tensioning. And then I go around the rest of the tent doing exactly the same with the other tabs. So now we're roughly pegged out. What we need to do first while the tent's still flat is actually put the porch pole in. The porch pole is in 3 sections. First of all, there's an upright section that goes across the top of the porch, and then one leg and then another leg. So I'm here at the red tab on the left hand side of the door as you enter, and all I have to do is unzip the door first. So I've unzipped the door and the integrated mosquito net and turned the tent just slightly inside out to expose this tube here. And this is where the top piece of the porch goes. And all we do, we just take that and thread that in. Until it pops out the other side. So once you've got your top section in of the porch into this sleeve, turn your door back out over that so it fits like this. And then you take one of your upright poles and fit it into one end of the top part of the porch. And then from here it goes down and pretty much points to that peg point there. And on the strap you'll find a ring with a key. This key goes into the bottom of the first pole. And then you duplicate that on the other side. So now you can see the ring and the key sticking up to the bottom end of the pole, and then to secure the tent to the pole itself you have these little tabs and a series of them going up the upright part of the pole. All I do there is just tie those in a bow. Time to put the main pole in. This is the pole bag that it comes in, and the whole pole for the tent is inside the bottom or largest section. These cups on either end with elasticated cord to keep everything inside. Take the cups off the end, and now you'll notice on the pole a smooth end and an end with ridges. On the largest part of the pole, the smooth end, that's the base, so that's the bit that's going to go on the Lavvu disc. And you offer all the pole sections out, arrange them in sizes, and then starting with the biggest and the ridges, take the second biggest and put the smooth to the ridged sections, and that locks in like so. And then the last section, it's got an open end and a plastic lug on the top. And plastic lug is always uppermost. I'm just going to open the top hat up now just to show you the detail of the construction inside. So the top hat is actually split into two. So you have one half here and one half there. To turn that inside out, you can see this cup, that's where the actual Lavvu pole goes to, and then all the structure and the construction of the tapes that actually feed back into each seam on the tent. So ensure nothing is twisted, everything's in the right place, and then we can put the Lavvu pole in. So we place the pole through the porch and then locate it and sticking outside of the hole in the top hat, and then we place it inside the cup of the Lavvu itself. Now currently that's inside out, okay, so I need to flip the material back over the cup like so. A final check to ensure everything's in place. And then we can start moving the pole in. A good tip, if you grab the bottom section and start to push and put your foot here, okay, you've got to remember these sections are not fixed, they can actually come away quite easily. So as you're doing that, push the tent up put the foot there. Then at some stage you'll have to get inside the tent and ensure the pole is straight. So now the tent pole is in. We're still only about 3/4 tensioned, but first of all we need to fix the porch. First thing we have to do is zip up all the way the mosquito net and then the outer. You'll notice just on the porch itself there is 2 tabs. I tend to just bounce out and just peg down 1 tab. And then what this allows me to do is unzip that door and come in from this side. First of all, I just want to wrap the outer and the mosquito net up. So you see here there's little tabs and clips. I'll just clip that on and then do the same with the mosquito net. So still at this stage the tent is only 3/4 tensioned. We're going to fit the floor, and as always with the red tab in the tent on the bottom left corner of the door as you go in, there's a red tab on the floor itself, so that marries up with that tab, and then you follow the tabs all the way around. So when you actually pitch the ground sheet, it's actually the shiny side uppermost, and then the red tab on the ground sheet to the bottom red tab on the outer. Clip in and then follow all the way around. There is actually midway tabs in between the sections of the tent on the floor itself. So I've got all the clips in onto the ground sheet now, but you'll notice it splits and on attaches with a Velcro system. This is for when the Lavvu stove comes in. It's obviously not on top of the ground sheet. But if you marry up the Velcro to the tabs on all sides, both across the top and also down to the door. And then once you're at the door, you can just clip that together. So now I need to fit the inner. This is the inner bag, so what I do first is pull it out, and I'm trying to locate the door and the actual opening, which is here, and I need to thread that underneath the pole. Okay, this is the reason why currently the tent is only 3/4 tensioned. Once this inner is underneath the pole, then I can do the final tensioning. Currently I've got a bit of play within that. I can actually fit the inner underneath. So I've located the door zip and the top of the inner. I put all those together. So I raise the pole and put that back onto the Lavvu disc. So now the inner is around the pole. I need to start marrying up the crown part of the inner with the crown part of the outer. And yet again, Helsport do a red tab system. There's a red tab here on the inner that coincides with the red tab up by the crown into there, and then you follow all the tabs right the way around. So before I actually clip the bottom of the inner into the outer, I want to remove these cords attached to the outer tent and put them inside the inner. We'll look at in more detail what these cords do shortly, but they're on little split hooks, and then pass them through the top of the crown so they're actually inside the inner. So we need to clip in the base of the inner. Yet again, red tab to red tab, and follow the tabs all the way around. So still at this stage we're only 3/4 tensioned. We've got the floor fitted and also the inner. So now we need to do the final tensioning and fix all the guide points. One of the first things you need to do is ensure that the inside mosquito netting and the outer is zipped up tight before you actually do the final tensioning. So now we've got the actual tent finally tensioned, time to fix the guides. I have a pretty simple rule on that. If there's a guide point on the tent, it's there for a reason, so we use it. So first of all, the Varanger series has got this guide point keeper. It's got a red tab with an elasticated loop. And all you do is just take out the guide point and release the guide that way. So as you can see here, I've got the two guide points just the right hand side of the porch, and I just use one peg and I get them roughly the same distance away. Put the peg in, but don't press it all the way down to the ground, and then using the guy line keys I tension up and then finish off and push the peg into the ground. Must also stress at this point that the door is still closed on the outer and the mosquito net. So now the tent is fully tensioned and all the guide points are out and attached. You can come inside the tent now. Obviously if you look at the inner, currently it's quite slack, and you can tension the inner by these tabs here where you've clipped them in, fully adjustable, and just tension that right the way around so the inner is nice and tight as well. You can also do that for the floor. So now just to tidy up the inner, especially near the crown. First of all, you have this piece of material hanging down. In the winter you can actually cinch that up like so to retain all the heat, but we're in the height of summer now. What we can do is actually roll it back, and there's 4 attachment points with a toggle and a D-ring, and just roll it back and attach those on. In here now you can see the top of the crown where we clipped it in earlier, and we can also tighten those up to give more tension to the inner itself. And then stitched into the outer there's this mosquito net, which this time of year is, in the height of summer, is quite a good bonus. You can actually cinch that around the pole to prevent any mosquitoes etc. getting into the tent. And then coming out of here now, we've got our cords for actually moving the top hat. I've actually taken them out and attached them onto the split hooks on the inside of the inner. If you imagine this top hat is actually split in two, so we've actually got two pieces of material sewn together at the crown where the pole meets. And here you've got a red cord and a green cord, and directly opposite that, that's the same, red and green. If you pull one of these cords, let's say the green one, on this side, actually opens up this side or this half of the top hat. To close that half, if you go on the opposite side and pull the red one, that closes that half up. And the same for this one, if you pull the green one, it opens the back half up, and then you pull the red one on the opposite side, it closes that half up. On the other side, there's two red bungee cords, and all these are for is once you've sorted out how you want your top hat, you actually cinch these up like this, and they're just a bungee cord to keep the two sides of the actual top hat down in place. So once you've had a play with the cord system inside to operate the top hat, on the outside there's two of these. These are adjustable tensioners with a hook on the end, and these in really bad stormy weather you can actually cinch that top hat down. And if you notice on one of these, or on the D-ring of the guy point, you can hook that clip on and then tighten up the top hat down, so closing it to prevent a lot of wind and rain getting inside. So with the outer you get a drying ring that sits around the actual central pole, and to fit those, first of all you get these 4 webbing straps, hooks on one end and U-shaped clips on the other. If you look up into the crown, you'll see various D's, and all you do with the hook is actually clip those on, those D's. And then just hang them down inside the inner. So the other components of the drying ring are these 4 flexible rods with aluminium tips on, and all we do with that is we fit a thin end into one of the aluminium tips like so, and then if you fit 3 together and bend it around the pole like so, and then so they join completely like that, that is then your drying ring. And then your clips that are hanging down actually clip on to these metal sections here. And that is your drying ring fitted. Both left and right of the entrance door to any Varanger, there is these vents, and this is the inner vent, which is just cinched up with a cord system and fitted with a mosquito net. And this on the inner actually ties in with a vent and a rain fly on the outer. These two vents do 2 things. One, they ensure a good flow of oxygen through the tent to reduce any carbon monoxide, and also to reduce any condensation. So now we're just going around the tent just to finish off. In the middle of each main peg point on a seam, there's a peg point in the middle. Quite straightforward. Peg that down, tension up, and then put the snow valance on. So the actual snow valance coming off the Lavvu, that does quite a number of things. First of all, in the winter you need to insulate this. Now you can do that with snow, you can do that with leaves or sticks or whatever you have around. In summer, on a very hot day like this, you can actually raise that up and actually let more air flow into it. But when you're on an organised campsite where you haven't got sticks or leaves or whatever to put on the side, you can use one of these. This is a large Klingon, and all we do at the midpoint, we just clip that on and then tie a little piece of cord around the back of that, and then using a tent peg actually pin that valance down. So now, putting together and fitting the Lavvu stove to the Lavvu itself. First of all, the stove comes in this really handy carry bag, and it zips all the way down to expose the stove. Just a couple of extra things that I have in here. First of all is some Hamaro paper. This is wax impregnated paper that I tend to light all fires and stoves with. And then an old boiler brush to actually clean out the flue sections once I pack the stove away. So you can see here, this is the stove box. In here, storage wise, this is the cowl. This protects the tent from the stove pipe. And inside of that, I've already got a stove pipe section. Here, this is the spark arrestor. This goes on top of the stove itself to reduce and break up small sparks coming out of the stovepipe. So here, if you open the stove door, you can see all of the stovepipe sections being stored inside the stove. First thing we need to do is just put the stove on its back and open the legs. And the stove sits that high. So the first thing I do is just empty the stove of all the flue sections, starting off in the middle, and just take them out and lay them down. You also find in here this shelf that can either be fitted at the bottom of the stove and get filled with wood, or can be fitted higher up just to make a quick hot fire and conserve firewood. So for this instance, I'm going to put the shelf on the bottom section, and then close the stove up. Now let's put the stove box inside the tent. So before you fit the stove, it's good to remove the floor. Obviously we don't want a floor in there with the stove in case anything falls out of the stove and damages the floor. So here right at the front is a little clip. We just unclip that, and then on a Velcro system it comes undone like so. And I find it's best if you actually fold the floor underneath itself rather than on the top. Makes the tent look a bit tidy. And there we go, the floor taken away, tucked to one side, ready for the stove going in. Now that the stove box is inside the tent, now I'm going to put all the flue pipe sections together. And the last piece, the actual spark arrestor. Let's go fit this to the stove box. For this particular size of tent, the 4 to 6 Varanger, you need to omit two stovepipe sections from the actual stove itself. They're just not necessary for this size of tent. So what I've already done is fitted two stovepipe sections on the stove box itself. So I'll go in first with a spark arrestor and go up out through the top hat of the crown of the tent. So you can see now the stovepipe section's in, and on the back it's just touching the pole slightly. So all I need to do is just edge that forward, have between a 4 and 6 inch gap behind the actual stove to the pole itself. What I need to do now is actually fit the cowl, and all I tend to do with that is count from the top down, get which stove sections I need to fit the cowl, take off that section and fit it. I've measured, I need to, my top section of my cowl needs to be about halfway up this second section from the spark arrestor, and then go as long down as it can. The cowl's quite important. It obviously protects the component parts of the tent from melting onto the stovepipe. So all you have is a tube, in theory, with these 3 sections in here, and that actually goes and keeps about a 1 inch 25mm gap from the inside of the cowl to the stovepipe itself. And on one end you have this threaded butterfly nut that actually tightens onto the stovepipe. Around the actual cowl itself is an extender that actually extends the length of the cowl like so. So a real good advantage. And all I do there, I fit that on, get that somewhere around about there, and tighten that up. And then move my cowl up and finish tightening up. That's the cowl fitted. As you can see now, this is a stovepipe and a cowl fitted. On some areas the component parts of the tent, like the main straps and the crown, are actually touching the cowl. This isn't a problem. You won't get that, as long as all the tent parts are touching the cowl, it won't melt. Currently the tent is quite open, and what you can do, you can actually go inside with a cord system and tension that top hat around the actual cowl itself to prevent rainwater from getting in. So the tent's up, the inner's in, we're all set up, stove's in, and we're ready to light it now. So, to actually open the door, you have to push in and open the handle. I always carry this stuff with us. This is Hamaro paper, and it's wax impregnated paper. Really easy to light fires and stoves. I actually use this at home on my fire at home. So all I do with 2 sections, you just wrap it around my index finger and make a little bit of a tube like that, and then place that in the stove. Do the same thing with another one. And then the last one, I just break over my index finger and just pull it apart. That's my fire lighting section, and then the remainder just wrap around my finger again. And then with that section there, just light it. Works just as well with a spark. And then place that in and light the other 3 bits. It lights really easily and readily. Once that's on, then you can actually sort of like thumb thick kindling start placing that on. and do it in a TP filey configuration, which you'll get a good bed of coals quickly. And then you can start adding larger bits of firewood. The other fuel you can burn on here is peat blocks. If you put 3 peat blocks on a well-established fire about 11 o'clock at night, the fire will still be in about 6-7 o'clock in the morning, so it's a real good fuel to have, especially in winter on a long night. Whatever you do, never put charcoal in, or coal or coke. It just burns too hot. So currently that's going quite readily. There's a lot of oxygen going into there. So if I just shut the door, and I'm leaving this vent open fully at the minute, so there's lots of oxygen going in to get the fire inside established. At night, if you have to, especially if you're using peat, if you have to shut it down, as it's called, you just move that disc to reduce the amount of oxygen going into the box itself. With regards to tent maintenance on the Helsport Varanger, first of all, within the peg bag you get a full repair patch kit, so patches for the outer, the inner and the floor. Most of these are self-adhesive, and also you do get a pot of glue as well. Due to the colour of the material, this dark green colour, one of the biggest things that affects it is UV light, especially on a day like today, which is very warm. So the best thing to do is every year is to actually reproof with some Fabsil waterproofer with a UV agent within it. This prolongs the life of the tent very well, and also gives it extra water repellency. The guide points, if the guide points or the guide cords become frayed, Helsport also do a Helsport guide kit where you get the guide keys and also the cord itself. With regards to the inner, if you do rip it or you rip the mesh or whatever, yet again within your peg bag there's some material there to repair it. Your ground sheet, that's good every now and again or after a trip, is actually to hose that down and reproof that as well. A good spray on reproofer such as a Fabsil, yet again is a really good bonus for your ground sheet. If you've been out for a bit of a trip and everything is wet, so the outer, the inner and the floor, it's very important that you actually dry everything out. I actually hang the outer and the inner from a carabiner in one of my workshops, and it's good to do that. It hangs up there, it hangs down, and every now and again when I pass it I just fold it round, and I really ensure everything's really dry before I pack it away. So now it's time to break camp and take everything all down and pack it up. So first of all we need to concentrate on the stove itself. A good tip to have in your stove bag is these quite cheap work gloves. This saves getting your hands all mucky with soot and things like that. So the first thing we have to do is take out the stove pipe with the cowl. We do that from 2 stove sections up from the actual stove box. We twist it and then take the stove pipe out. Then we go on in and take the stove box out with the remaining 2 stove pipe sections. So we've emptied all the ash out and the stove box is clean. So we need to first of all start dismantling our stove pipe. So spark arrestor off and then take the stove pipe sections out. Unscrew the cowl, take that off and then just push that all the way home like so. It's good just to store one stovepipe section inside the cowl. Not everyone fits inside the stove. And then leave the spark arrestor outside as well. on the actual top of the stove itself, the shelf inside, that's where we put that, store that in its uppermost. And then we start putting the stovepipe sections in, filling the bottom first and the top. And that's it. Always ensure that you put it down, feet down first. This is uppermost where the actual stovepipe goes. And then zip up slightly. Once it's there, it's good to grab it, move the stove to the back of the bag. You take your cowl, and with the adjusting screw uppermost, you fit that in and fit it on top of the actual stove itself. This protects it from any damage. Then your spark arrestor goes down the side, and then things like the Hamaro paper, brush and the gloves, they go in. And then handles velcro together. And that's a stove packed away, maintained for next time. It's time to remove the floor in the inner. First of all, actually just while I'm unclipping the floor, I actually unclip the inner at the same time, saves me doing two jobs. And then I take the floor out and pack it away in its bag. You can, if you need to, pack down the inner and the outer at the same time, but I find this quite confusing. You get a lot of cords tangled up and everything, so I prefer to take everything out and just have the three main components, dry those separately, pack them separately. So I'm just finishing off packing up the floor in its bag, and what I never do is never fold a tent or fold an inner or whatever. I just actually stuff it in a bag. And the reason for that is if you fold it and you always fold it the right way, you always get a seam or a weak point. So it's better off, I think, with a tent is just stuffing it back in a bag. So the floor's out and you can still see the inner. The inner's been unclipped around the circumference of the tent, but it's still attached in the top. The dry ring's out and the cords have been removed. So the reason that's still in there is obviously the outer is still under tension. So all I need to do now is just to show you how to remove and store the guys, and then slacken the tent off so I can remove the inner. You just grab the guy line key and then just slacken off, and then slacken off, and then grab the cords and then pull out the peg. Move the guy line key up to the tent, and then with four fairly open fingers just wrap those around. And just pinch them for now. Pull down on the red cord with the elastic loop, put that through, and then it's stored like that. What we need to do now is go around to all the peg points and just slacken those off slightly, slacken them off about a quarter, which gives us a bit of room then to drop the inner from the crown, lift the pole up and take the inner out and pack it away. And then from there then we just re-clip the cords to the split hooks on the inside of the inner. With the door of the inner still open, we raise up the pole and take out the inner. So now the inner is ready for packing away. So we've still got one guy pointing up at the porch itself with the porch pole still in, and the main pole itself. All we need to do is actually grab the pole, lift it up off the peg on the Lavvu disc and walk out the door. So as you can see, the porch is still standing. All we need to do on the upright sections is just undo the small straps that we tied up on with a bow, and then lift them up and take the key out of the bottom. And then remove the upright poles. Then just remove the upright section. Unclip the door on the mosquito net. Then we can move on, packing the tent away in its bag. So sometimes the actual pull and breaking it all down can get a little bit confusing, but this is my way of doing it. So this is a thicker end and thinner end. All we have to do is take that off, turn it 180 and slide it back on. And then take the two pole sections, take it off, 180 and slide it back on. And then the last section, 180 into there, and then cup on one end, up on the other. Then all this does is store it's through there, cinch that up. There's a little hook on there now, and that clips on to the outer bag. And that is it. The Helsport 4-6 Varanger Camp with the floor and the inner tent. Just with regards to sizes, if you are thinking of purchasing one of these, the 4-6 with an inner is a good 2-manner with equipment. The 8-10 with an inner is a good 3 to 4 man, and the 12 to 14 is a good 4 to 6 man. For more information on the Helsport series of Lavvus, please take a look at our website. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and keep watching for more.